2023 seems to be shaping up to be the year of The Last of Us. It starts with a TV adaptation of the first masterpiece game starring Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey. Then in March, The Last of Us Part 1 Remake is getting a PC port. We also have been promised a lot of new information for the mysterious Last of Us standalone multiplayer project, but even that's not all. Naughty Dog has also teased other fun surprises along the way, especially with regards to the original Last of Us's 10-year anniversary in June. And to me, there can really only be two fun surprises that seem worthy of hyping the fans up like this. Dr. Pooplove here, and today I want to talk about Naughty Dog's plans for The Last of Us in 2023, and what surprises we might be able to expect as we get closer to that 10-year anniversary in June. And stick around until the end, because I want to share my thoughts on whether all of this is a good thing or not. But let's get right into it. And The Last of Us is already starting this year off strong, with a lot of news and interviews from Neil Druckmann, who also released a Naughty Dog blog post teasing all that the fans can expect from the series this year. The HBO show is, unsurprisingly, already receiving rave reviews. And once the broader public catches on to this series, I imagine The Last of Us will have risen to even new heights, and that current Last of Us fans will be living in a much different world as a wave of new fans flood in. We will have to closely view how all of this affects sales of the recently released Last of Us Part 1 remake. The show alone should generate interest, but Naughty Dog is planning a behind-the-scenes series throughout the show run that is set to connect the show strongly to the game. This is, to me, a very clear marketing tactic that will likely aim to convince non-gamer fans of the show to check the game out, especially with the best graphics and a bevy of accessibility options that will clear so many barriers to entry that otherwise might have scared people off. Of course, a lot of this will culminate in March as the series finale comes close, with Naughty Dog dropping a PC port, allowing further access to both gamers and non-gamers alike. This seems to be following the Witcher strategy, but on steroids. For those that don't know, the success of the Witcher TV show led to a massive spike in Witcher 3 game sales, despite being years old. In this case, Sony has a brand new version of the game and all of these marketing tactics in place, aimed at capitalizing greatly on this exact same strategy. But what is even more insane to think about is how this is kind of only the beginning. Rather than having that success and going quiet, Naughty Dog and Sony are keeping the conversation going. Of course, they have been teasing the long-awaited The Last of Us multiplayer standalone title, a sequel to the original Last of Us Factions multiplayer mode. And what better way to fill the silence between seasons of the show than by teasing a way that players can endlessly continue to live and experience the Last of Us world, with its own story to follow and gameplay that has been made to not only appeal to hardcore fans, but will have ways for newer and more casual players to enjoy. We don't know exactly when this game will be available. We only know that we will be provided a lot more information this year, but either way, this should be out before the likely Last of Us Season 2 airs, so it should still be a way to help with that wait. Of course, Naughty Dog apparently is not stopping there, as in their blog post they allude to even more announcements and surprises this year. So let's talk about The Last of Us Part 2 Director's Cut. Interestingly, Naughty Dog has provided a PS5 patch to The Last of Us Part 2 that made some upgrades like making the game run at 60 FPS, but Sony recently removed a video advertising that. Many believe they did this because a full PS5 port and or a director's cut is in the works. This could provide new content that was perhaps scrapped from the original game. Some would like to see Tommy's days in Seattle, for instance, but perhaps Abby and Lev's journey to Santa Barbara or even to Catalina Island is on the table, or maybe even some more Ellie and Joel flashbacks. Of course, it could just be a more complete PS5 port with more enhanced PS5 features like improved DualSense functionality and the ability to run at 120 FPS, as well as potentially additions that The Last of Us Part 1 brought, like a speedrun mode and better accessibility options. But perhaps what we might see is something even bigger than The Last of Us Part 2. It could potentially be a tease for The Last of Us Part 3, which has been receiving a lot of rumors recently, and Neil Druckmann himself recently said in an interview that he believes that there's more story to tell. It does feel a bit early for this game to be teased, if I'm being honest, as I imagine this game is still years away, and it seems that Sony has been preferring to remain quiet until games are closer to ready, but we should have a much bigger idea by The Last of Us's 10-year anniversary in June, which Naughty Dog themselves has highlighted as a very important Last of Us milestone to be looking forward to. Of course, it could just be merch, but how do I feel about all this? Well, I'm worried. I love The Last of Us as a franchise, and of course, the multiplayer is my most anticipated game. But I do worry that all these efforts at once may be a bit of overkill and may make The Last of Us feel less special. I think of how properties like Star Wars and Marvel have cranked out endless content that is really hard to even keep up with, and how disappointing entries for Star Wars in particular have turned a beloved franchise for me into one that I really couldn't be bothered to care about anymore. And Sony seems to be adamant about this total cross-media strategy as the way forward for all of their beloved franchises. But this success is still unproven, and it worries me that The Last of Us is being thrown out as the first guinea pig for this strategy. I mean, what happens if it doesn't work out? How will this affect such a beloved franchise? And also, I may be in the minority on this front, but I want Naughty Dog to move on to a new IP and dazzle me yet again with what they're able to come up with. But while I have my worries, I will reserve my judgment until later this year, when we have a much clearer picture of what Naughty Dog has in store. Of course, whatever Naughty Dog makes, I end up loving regardless, so in that respect, I have to have a little faith that they know that whatever they're doing is for the best. But we also just don't have all the details, and of course, rumors and unconfirmed information should always be taken with a huge grain of salt. But these are not all the Naughty Dog rumors that have been floating around recently. And that's why you should check out this video, which goes over even more rumors regarding Naughty Dog and other franchises. But otherwise, so long, Pooper Troopers.